when everyone else is relying on you. It's easy to put your needs last. BetterHelp connects you with a licensed therapist online, so you can show up for yourself the way you do for others. Find more balance with BetterHelp. Visit BetterHelp.com today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp.com.
Welcome back to the Comment Chameleon podcast, where we cover stories from your favorite subreddits like malicious compliance, pro-revenge, and tales from tech support. Today, we're jumping into some malicious compliance. This story comes to us from Dark Altar 2000. Leave the floor wet? Alright, enjoy your rotten wood. Let's jump right in. First time posting here because I just remembered this incident. Back in the early 2000s, my mother, 40 female, worked as a cleaner for a couple places and took me, 13 male, with her to help. One place we worked for was the only real estate place in town. We cleaned up before the people who worked there got in. When I started there, it was small and somewhat dirty. Old smelly cubicle partitions in faded brown off-color walls, ingrained dirt in the linoleum. We cleaned and I literally couldn't tell the difference after we were done, except the mirror in the washroom not having any spots on it, and the floor being wet from the fresh mopping. Then the town started becoming a cottage town, and it is decided that they will move to a nicer place. Cottagers must find the griminess a little off-putting. New place had a bit more space, brand new blue cubicle partitions, newly painted walls that still smelled the first day I cleaned in there, and a cheap hardwood panel floor. That floor was a bit of a problem. See, before, when we mopped, we would just leave the water to dry on the linoleum. We could do that because we got there at 6:30, and they opened at 7:30. The place was small enough that it was mopped by around 7 o'clock before we left, and would mostly be dry by the time people arrived. If we did the same thing for this cheap wood floor, my mother was worried we would have water seep into the cracks between the wood panels and rot them. So a new method for mopping was devised. First, I dunk the mop, then wring the mop lightly, mop up, wring the mop again, but fully this time, and then mop up as much of the excess water as possible. This new method actually visibly got a lot more water off the floor. By the time we left, some of the earlier mopped areas would look mostly dry. Good solution, Mom. Couple weeks into the new place, my mother gets contacted by the manager, and a new order comes in that we are not to dry the floor. I asked if she explained why we dried it. She had. I found this order a bit baffling at the time, and it only occurred to me today the reason why he ordered this. The manager got in earlier than everyone else at about 7:15, so I actually saw him a few rare times when we ran late. The old floor would have still been visibly wet in the old place when he got in. The new floor was now dry when he got in. Ipso facto, we must have decided to skip mopping to leave early. Even though I didn't understand at the time that he thought we weren't doing our job, I, of course, found this new order stupid. I thought, he wants the floors wet when he gets in? Fine. Cue malicious compliance. You see, I did the mopping while my mom cleaned the washroom because I was a young strapping lad, and she was mom, so I did what she said. I now had a standing order from the boss to leave a wet floor, and by gum, it was gonna be sopping. From that day forth, not only did I not dry the floor, I now didn't even wring the mop after dunking it. I dipped it in the water and just let water slop off the mop as I pulled it directly out of the bucket. There was no way this was gonna dry before he got in. Probably not for an hour after he got in either. 2 weeks after I started doing this, lo and behold, the wood paneling is already starting to separate at the seams. Dirt is accumulating between tiles. It proves impossible to remove. I was a bit shocked at the time how fast that had happened. 4 weeks into the new mopping routine, the floor was rotting. Was my mother psychic or what? It was apparently very cheap fiberboard with a paper-thin plastic wood grain pattern on it. I would have guessed a laminate wood grain on top of a semi-waterproof fiberboard if you'd asked me 4 weeks ago. The floor now had visible divots and lines where the plastic paper sank into the deteriorating wood underneath. These trapped dirt in them as well. How classy. The floor, not even 2 months after they had moved into the place, was even worse than the old beat-up linoleum one. At this point, I asked my mother if we should start drying the floor, And wouldn't you know it, she had already asked. The answer was no, leave it wet. Baffling. We cleaned there for another month or so. I barely felt safe walking on the floor as it was now a tripping hazard with warped parts popping up. It was also disintegrating. Splinters of wood would pop up every time I swept. The floor now had the dubious distinction of being the worst floor I had seen in a place that wasn't dilapidated. Jumping down to the comment section on this one, there's one from a user called Myros. It says, "Nice one. I have to wonder though, was there never any feedback because of that rotting, warped, ugly floor? Manager and or employees clearly would have had the same issues moving across it as you and felt it was unsafe and unhygienic. Guess that guy went to a top-notch manglement university then, didn't want to go back on his previous order, and accepted his fate with the destroyed floor. Any clue if the floor got changed at some point?" OP responded to the comment and said, "It was a real estate place, so after we stopped cleaning there, I never had the occasion to go back. They must have fixed it at some point though. At minimum, just putting down rugs or something. It would be insanity to just leave it like that." So just think about this. You're a new couple, you're deciding to get your first house. You walk into the real estate agent's office and the floor is falling apart. If they can't even keep their office from going into disrepair, what does that say about the houses that they're trying to sell? I would have absolutely no trust in these people at all. This story comes to us from Chia Seed Mess. Your trash cans may only be out at specific times. Let's jump right in. We live in an HOA, and if you don't, lucky you. We have never had any real problems. They don't do much other than make sure the park and gardens look good. Anyhow, for whatever reason, they decided to add a new rule. It wasn't needed, but I guess they got bored and wanted something to do. Maybe someone kept leaving their trash cans out all week. Fine, just ask them not to. It's not that hard. The new rule states when trash cans can be put out. They can't be put out before 6 a.m. on Wednesdays and must be put back before 6 p.m. the same day. This is obviously stupid and has a few problems. First of all, some people use a different company. The HOA provided one goes on Wednesday and it's cheap, so most people use it, but you don't have to. Some people have theirs go Monday or Tuesday. Also, a lot of people here work in the medical field and just aren't home during those times. So no one is there to put out or bring in cans. So a few of us got together on how to comply, but be annoying about it. We decided to comply with their set times as best we can. Take it out at 6 when a lot of us go to work or go for a morning walk. And take it back in at 6 since most of us are home. Some of us help by taking others' bins to the street if they're at work. But when it is time to take out the trash, do it as loud as effing possible. Bin has wheels? Drag it. Got it to the street? Make sure it's firmly placed on the street. Need to take out other bags? Slap it in there and let the lid slam shut. For those who have trash go out on other days, comply with the times, but do it on your trash day. Then, also put them out on Wednesday as required. If you can, leave trash in them and leave the lid open too. It would bake in the sun all day. Yes, it did smell like hot trash. That's the point. After 3 weeks of this, an email was sent out. The rule was thrown out, and we were all simply asked to put out and take in our cans within a reasonable amount of time, preferably on trash day. Was it really that effing hard to ask nicely? Why not just address whoever was the problem? Know that because an HOA rule was changed, a lawyer was paid to look over it before the CC&R could be updated. That means this stupid rule cost every resident money. Anyhow, we are already planning on voting out one member of the board who we know is the problem come the summer election. Jumping down to the comment section on this one, there's one from a user called SongInHeart17 that I completely agree with. It says, "The strangest part of this whole story to me, as somebody who doesn't live in the US or an HOA, is that you have different days for garbage pickup. My city contracts with one company to manage the collection for the whole city, covered by taxes. Yep, I didn't really understand this one myself because my city does a contract with one company and they pick up everything in the whole city. Although we do have to pay $2 a bed, which kinda sucks. Another way that OP could have complied in this case would have been to get everybody together and put all their garbage on one front lawn during those pickup times, but just having a massive pile of it right there on one property. That would have been hilarious.
This is Mike Taylor. If you have been injured in any type of accident, car, work, whatever, you pay nothing out of your pocket. It is Carabin Shaw, 222-2288. Google the spelling. It's carabinshaw.com.
Walk the dogs, school drop-off, meetings from 10 to 3, take kids to soccer, then no time left for a jog.
When everyone else is relying on you, it's easy to put your needs last. BetterHelp connects you with a licensed therapist online, so you can show up for yourself the way you do for others. Find more balance with BetterHelp. Visit BetterHelp.com today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp.com.
This story comes to us from Land in the Sky. Manager tried throwing me under the bus, so I showed everyone her incompetence. Let's jump right in. I recently worked from a toxic workplace as a data analyst at a startup. It was promising at the start, but not long after, I noticed many red flags, including the fact that my manager had absolutely no data analysis or management experience prior to being promoted. How can you manage analysts without knowing basic Excel functions? I ignored those red flags and trusted her leadership because I liked the company's goals. Little did I know, this would be the worst decision ever. I basically did all the work for the team for the whole year I was there. When I ran the numbers for reporting and analysis of team performance, she always asked me to dumb it down so she can present it to high-level management. I thought everything was going well because I only got good feedback from her and the rest of the team. About a month ago, a coworker who I don't get along with made a complaint about me, which was absolutely untrue. Manager believed it without investigating, and all of a sudden, I was placed on a performance improvement plan. She spouted all types of lies to HR, and when I refuted those claims with written evidence, they doubled down and started gaslighting me. "You're just too negative." I refused to sign and was threatened with termination, so I complied and started building a case against them. I knew she was doing the performance improvement plan to terminate me, as she looked for internal candidates to replace me in secret, because she was dumb enough to set them meeting up beside me. Once I signed my contract for a new job, I did basically F all and started working from home. Before my resignation, she asked me to do some reporting for her, so I ran the numbers and sent her the raw data, told her where the files were located, and that she can analyze the data and make the presentation herself. Since she's the data analyst manager, she should know how to do it. She tried reporting me for that, but ultimately it backfired because they asked her if the work that I did was actually wrong, and was forced to admit she didn't know what she was looking at. Everyone else in the team was questioned, and I believe they are now being audited by an external investigator. Credibility destroyed. I'm now working for a manager who is competent and has clear goals for the team. But that was a hell of a ride. Small win against toxic management, but a win is a win. Jumping down to the comments on this one, there's one from a user called CABird78. It says, "Good thing the data doesn't lie, unlike your former boss. I bet she's now Googling Excel functions for beginners." It kind of makes you wonder how unqualified people get promoted into positions like this when they don't know what they're doing at all. I'd have to assume that in their previous position they were probably riding somebody else's coattails, and it was only a matter of time until they were found out and brought down. This next story comes to us from Dubalendar. No refunds once you've stepped out of the store? Fine, I won't step out of the store. Let's jump right in. This happens in a large store in a European country. When you purchase something from them and for any reason want to return the item, their policy is that they never give money back. They only give you a voucher redeemable the same day only. I went to the store today and purchased quite a long list of items. I got home, my wife looks at them and says, "We don't need some of them." I go back to the store, barely 20 minutes pass. The returns manager smiles at me as I tell her I just purchased these and would like to return them. She tells me that I stepped out of the store, so she can't refund. Only give me a voucher and I must buy something else. I'd already bought everything I needed. Then she tells me to take the products home and keep them for the next time I would need to buy something. Then I can come and get the voucher and redeem it. Imagine keeping a pair of shoes and a bowl and remembering to bring them with you the next time you happen to need something. I tried to reason, but she was adamant. Those are the rules. You stepped out of the store, you don't get a refund. And then it clicked. I asked, so if someone wants to return an item without leaving the store, they get the money back? Yes. You see where this is heading? Malicious compliance kicking in. I asked to return the items and get the voucher. I take the voucher, get inside the store, find a product to exactly the same amount, buy it with the voucher. Right after the cashier, there's the returns manager. Straight from the cashier, I go to her, hand her that random product I just bought, and say, I'd like to return this, I don't want it, and I never left the store. She is looking at me with barely contained rage in her eyes, I kid you not. The awkward pause was getting longer, and then her manager comes along, looks at us, and I smile at him and say, I never left the store, and I would like to get a refund for this, please. He nods. Silent and not looking at me, she proceeds to refund me the money in cash. Company policy, right? Jumping down to the comment section on this one, there's one from a user called Gumnos. It says, this has the audacity of a dog staring at you while it poops on the carpet. And I know you don't like this, and there's nothing you can do about it without making matters worse. Very nicely done. Yep, this one is definitely on the store. If they didn't have any fine print on that voucher saying that you couldn't return things for cash value, well, that was their own dumb fault. OP just took advantage of their own rules and came out on top. Well done, OP. Thank you for listening to the Comment Chameleon podcast. Don't forget to check us out on YouTube at youtube.com/@KCC.
This is Mike Taylor. If you have been injured in any type of accident, car, work, whatever, you pay nothing out of your pocket. It is Carabin Shaw, 222-2288. Google the spelling. It's carabinshaw.com.
Hey, babe, what you got there?
This is a check from Carvana. I just sold my car to them. I went online and Carvana gave me an offer right away. Then they just picked up the car and gave me this.
Well, that's a big check. Well, obviously you could put this towards your next car, or we could finally get that jacuzzi, or I could start taking tuba lessons, or I could quit my job and write my memoir.
Or I can put it towards my next car with Carvana.
Sorry, your check, not mine.
Sell your car to Carvana. Visit Carvana.com or download the app to get a real offer in seconds.
The McNay Print Fair is happening soon. 15 dealers from around the U.S. will have thousands of prints, drawings, watercolors, and photographs for sale in the Leaper Auditorium on Saturday, May 6th and Sunday, May 7th. You'll see works of art, meet dealers, and maybe go home with a new treasure. Whether you're looking for French landscape prints, powerful images of American life, or contemporary graphics, learn more at mcnayart.org/printfair. That's mcnayart.org/printfair.
University Health in San Antonio, Texas is hiring nursing, radiology, and respiratory professionals. University Health is the premier Level 1 trauma center in South Texas. We have earned recognition as a 2022 top U.S. workplace. We offer relocation assistance and excellent benefits. If you are a nursing, radiology, or respiratory healthcare professional, we want to visit with you. Apply today at bestcareerssa.com. That's bestcareerssa.com.
Hello and welcome back to the Comment Chameleon podcast, where we cover your favorite subreddits like malicious compliance, pro-revenge, and tales from tech support. Don't forget to check us out on YouTube at youtube.com/@KCC. Today, we're jumping into some malicious compliance. This story comes to us from Absurd and Nihilistic, yet another new manager facing the consequences of their action story. Let's jump right in. I'll keep the details vague as possible because I'm still with this organization. I work for a government department. We have offices and locations all over the state. I'm based out of a city that's a 2 and a bit hour train ride to our head office. At the time, I was working in a team that had members working remotely all across the state, looking after policy, process, and quality assurance. Our old manager had gone and gotten himself promoted for being genuinely brilliant at his role. So our new manager, Steve, was hired in from the glorious world of banking, and he was here to whip us lazy public servants into shape. A few days after he began his role, he called us all to a teleconference to inform us he wanted all of us to be at the head office 8 a.m. tomorrow morning for an all-day in-person team meeting. He wanted to see us in meat space to size us up, understand what we were doing, and see where we weren't keeping up with the private sector. As I mentioned, due to the nature of the work we were doing, we were all across the state. So in person, whole team meetings were rare, and if they occurred at all, they were booked weeks in advance. We were all adept at video conferencing long before COVID. Some of us tried to tell our new high flyer manager that almost none of us were in the same city as him, and to be there on such short notice would mean travel expenses, meal allowances, overtime, etc. He didn't seem to care, and told us in no uncertain terms to just be at the head office tomorrow at 8 a.m. before abruptly hanging up. Now, I should explain something. I'm one of a handful of union delegates in our department. I know our award back to front. Specifically, the sections dealing with travel, allowances, and overtime. So I engaged malicious compliance mode. If Steve wanted us there, fine, but it'll cost him. So I quickly went about emailing my team what Steve had done by requiring us to be in the head office at 8 a.m. and what to do. Because we'd have to travel outside our normal work hours, our workday clock started ticking the moment we left our homes and only stopped once we got home. Some of our team traveled overnight. They were entitled to overtime travel, a dinner allowance and accommodation for the night, and the same returning. As someone traveling in the morning before 7 a.m., I was entitled to a breakfast allowance, lunch allowance, and if I got home after 9 p.m., a dinner allowance also. So I left my house at 5 a.m. to catch the only train that would get me there in time. The train was running slightly behind, but I made it in time. So my first 3 hours of my workday down, and I'd done no work. After a brief period of us introducing ourselves to Steve, he proceeded to spend the next 4 hours telling us about all of the things he did at the bank, how he made so much money for them, where they'd sent him as a holiday bonus, how we're all stuck in the past in the public service, the work he'd seen wasn't up to private sector standards, etc. He had all the cocksureness of a finance bro who had always failed upwards because others had picked up his slack. By 3 p.m., my entire team were into overtime pay territory, and Steve was just warming up with his non-charm offensive. About 3 hours go by with Steve verbally patting himself on his back, deeply in love hearing his own voice, but all I hear is cha-ching, cha-ching. Steve decided that 5 p.m. was a good time to finish up. He stopped mid-sentence, looked at his watch, and unceremoniously said, "That's all for today, go home now," and walked out. After I and a few others gave a few awkward shrugs to each other, we all packed up and started to make our separate ways home after doing no work all day. I myself got to the train station pretty quickly and saw a train was leaving soon that would get me home around 8 p.m. Or I could catch the all stations train and get home closer to 9:30 p.m. You know what? No matter how fast I could run, I just couldn't catch that earlier train. Darn, I'd just have to catch that all stations train and be on the clock for another hour and a half, plus have my dinner paid for. Such rotten luck. I submitted my claims the next day, 4.5 hours at double rate, my train tickets, my taxi fares to and from the train station, my breakfast, lunch, and dinner allowances. For me alone, it was close to a $500 expense claim. The rest of my team followed suit and ensured they claimed everything too. Steve tried to fight us on approval for the claims, but quickly learned that unlike in the world of banking, most public servants are union, and we'd raise living heck if he denied our award guaranteed allowances. His all-day Steve Fest symposium blew a good $6,000 hole in his budget. Needless to say, while Steve was our manager, he never required us to attend an in-person meeting again. Video conferencing was just fine. He only lasted 6 months before leaving for new opportunities. He just went back to his old job at the bank. Guess he was the one who couldn't keep up. Jumping down to the comment section in this one, there's one from a user called W. Nichols. It says, Steve's biggest mistake was not understanding the climate of your department and prejudging everyone as knowing nothing. Arrogance is the reason some leaders aren't adaptable. But as long as Steve stays in his lane at the private company that allows him to blame his shortcomings on employees, he'll prosper in ignorance. It seems to me Steve's whole personality was, I am so special, and my crap don't stink. He really did embody the term seagull management. He flew in, he made a lot of noise, he crapped all over everything, and then he took off again.
University Health in San Antonio, Texas is hiring nursing, radiology, and respiratory professionals. University Health is the premier Level 1 trauma center in South Texas. We have earned recognition as a 2022 top U.S. workplace. We offer relocation assistance and excellent benefits. If you are a nursing, radiology, or respiratory healthcare professional, we want to visit with you. Apply today at bestcareerssa.com. That's bestcareerssa.com.
This story comes to us from Sarah Sill. You want to send me home? Sounds good. Let's jump right in. So I was a sarcastic and easily annoyed guy in my 20s, and this often didn't help me get along with older or corporate types. I was working at a certain pumpkin-colored big box home improvement store one spring, in the flooring department. It was just starting to get warm out and the store didn't have much AC. So I was looking forward to a magical date where certain employees were allowed to switch their pants for shorts. Problem is that we had a new department manager, I'll call him Dick, who was aggressively chasing a promotion to assistant manager, then store manager. He thought he could accomplish that by being a super, by-the-book hard butt and being relentlessly metrics focused. This translated into a manager who was a know-it-all, micromanaging dick. Anyway, I'm scheduled to open at 5 a.m. on the fabled day of cooler bottom wear, and I walk in all light and airy and bare-legged. Dick, who was an overnight manager the previous night, saw me and threw a fit. "Why are you out of uniform?" he asked. "I'm not. I can wear shorts starting today," I proclaimed. "Not your position in your department. Who told you that you could?" he retorted. "The employee's handbook and standard operating procedures? I can show you if you don't believe me," I offered. "I know the SOP, and your department doesn't get to wear shorts. That's only garden. Go home and change right now," he demanded, face getting redder from my defiance. "Okay, Dick, if that's how you want to play it, I'll be back in an hour," I sighed. "Maybe the loss of an hour of pay will teach you something." So I know better. The reason I know better is because I'm one of the weirdos who actually read the entire standard operating procedure document, the employee handbook, which is actually just a subsection of the standard operating procedures, and I really hate being wrong. So I check the SOP before doing anything different day to day. In my store, the SOP was like invoking God. If the SOP said so, that won every single argument. So I go home, change into pants, but bring my shorts back to work with me. By now, Dick's shift is over, and I ask the new morning manager on duty, Darren, to meet with me. "Why? What's up?" "Oh, just an SOP issue." "Oh, okay. Give me like 10 minutes. So I swung by my desk and printed out several things. One, my latest pay stub that included my official job title and department number. 2, the company directory that listed the department names and their associated numbers. 3, the standard operating procedure that dealt with when and which departments and employees can wear shorts. 4, the annual email from the regional VP confirming which departments could wear shorts starting when, which also included the line, "And this letter is to be posted at the time clock between the dates of this and this." 5, the SOP detailing the company transportation and mileage reimbursement policy. 6, a Google Maps route that mirrored the route I take to and from work with the total mileage highlighted. So I meet with Darren and explained what happened and handed him each page in turn as they became relevant. At the end, we agreed that I was right on every single account and asked me what I wanted. 1, I wanted the time. I was turned away before I could clock in, so I wanted to be paid starting at 5 a.m. Feel free to check the CCTV if you want to confirm when I arrived. 2, I want the mileage, because Dick sent me on essentially a company errand with my own vehicle through no fault of my own. 3, I want this letter posted at the clock like it says it's supposed to be. 4, I want you to talk to Dick about this, because I told him this was the SOP before he sent me home. 5, I'm changing back into my shorts. All of that sounds more than fair. Get the paperwork for the clock adjustment and mileage to me today and I'll sign it. The letter mysteriously went missing from the time clock the next day, but I replaced it every day until I happened to see Dick angrily snatch it off the board and throw it away. I reported that as well, and the letter stopped going missing. He didn't talk to me much, and I was transferred to another department a month later, so all in all, win-win, I think. This is another example of a person who has absolutely no business being in a management position. One of the hallmarks of a good manager is somebody who can look at what they said, admit their mistakes, and then make the changes needed to make things right. Crapping on people all day doesn't make you a good manager, it makes people resent you. And once your employees resent you, well, there's really no coming back from that.
University Health is hosting a job fair for housekeepers and floor tech positions. The event will be held on Wednesday, May 10th from 1 p.m. to 3:30 p.m. On-the-spot job offers will be made. Housekeeping and floor tech job fair, May 10th, 1 p.m. to 3:30 p.m. at 5800 Theranon. Pre-register at bestcareerssa.com. That's bestcareerssa.com.
This story comes to us from Rugby Player 96. Doesn't matter if the case is closed or not? Okay then, let's jump right in. I work in a call center that primarily deals with the public, with issues or queries they have, and whilst we can deal with a lot ourselves, there are a lot of things we must either log for another department to look into, or transfer them across to that department. For example, if someone calls about a broken street lamp, they get transferred across to the street lighting team. But if someone calls about a pothole, we have to log it for the highway team to fix it. Some departments don't have an internal number for the caller to get transferred across to, or a number we can call to speak to that department. And one of those departments is the enforcement department. Of all the systems and departments we use and liaise with, the trickiest one we deal with is the enforcement system. Basically, ranging from food safety to the environment, there were multiple teams that enforced things, and all of these issues had to be logged on this system. For example, if someone called to report their neighbor for being too loud, that had to get logged on the system for the noise enforcement team to investigate. But we had to arrange for letters to be sent out about it. If someone reported an abandoned car, we logged it, and the environment enforcement team went out to investigate. If someone said they got food poisoning from a restaurant, we logged it, and the food safety team investigated it, and so on. The reason why it was so tricky was because if you missed a step, it didn't get logged properly, and it didn't go to the correct team, which meant that someone would complain to your manager about it. And crucially, this was a legal system, which meant that if the issue escalated to court, whatever you wrote in your notes could be used in the court proceedings. This wasn't a second nature, eyes closed kind of system. You needed to be concentrating because something you log can bite you in the butt a month later. For example, when someone calls to say that they haven't received a letter and it turns out you didn't send it in the first place. The way it worked was that a case was logged, which meant that it was open, and it got assigned to an officer like pulling a name out of a hat. And throughout the time that it was open, if someone called back to give you more information about the case, you could update it, and that update went directly to the investigating officer. And then, when the investigation had finished, the case was closed by that officer. Basically, once a case was assigned to an officer, they had to see it through from start to finish. Whether it was deciding if a noise complaint was justified or going through black bags that were reported as fly tipping to see if they could find anything that tied someone to that rubbish, and so on. It wasn't as simple as that though, because there were cases that had been open for years with multiple updates. There were multiple cases that had been opened and closed between the same properties for the same reasons. Or someone had called about something and you weren't 100% sure it should be logged or not, etc. I'm not sure how my colleagues dealt with those situations, but whenever I got a call like that, I just emailed the investigating officer just to explain the situation and ask for advice, and CC'd in their colleagues just in case the investigating officer was off. Or I just emailed the team to ask if they wanted me to log it as a new case or not, since if it was an ongoing situation with multiple cases for the same thing, many officers may have dealt with it, and they may have not wanted me to log it as a new case. I didn't see an issue with it because they either emailed me back with an answer or they didn't reply but logged it themselves after they'd looked into it. But one day, I got a thorny email from a thornier senior environmental officer, basically telling me off and telling me not to send them emails anymore because the system was there to be used. I emailed him back, explaining that it wasn't that simple, because there were tricky cases that I needed help with, and I didn't want to update an old case or log a case if I didn't need to not unnecessarily add to the caseloads of the officers. And he replied back, reiterating that I shouldn't send any more emails, and finished it off by telling me to either update the case whether it was open or closed, or open a new case. Cue malicious compliance. From that day forward, I did not send another email. If I got a call about an issue and the last time the issue was raised was in 2017, I updated the 2017 case. If I was on the fence about logging something as a new case or not, I just logged it anyway. If I checked the last case and the investigating officer had left, I updated it anyway. I was unaware of this, but when I told people that the investigating officer would call them back, like they typically did after we asked them to in our updates, they would call us a couple of weeks later to ask why they hadn't received a call, and my colleagues would have to raise a new case for them because the one I updated was closed. The officers also suddenly had an influx of new cases, because every time I updated a closed case, it reopened, which added to their caseload. The system they used worked on dates and caseloads. For example, if I asked them to call someone or inspect a property in my update, the system generated a time frame for them to complete that action by. But if they were too busy to do something I'd asked them to do, it went red, which counted against them. Also, for example, if they had 4 cases open and then they closed 3 and they'd gone down to 1, they'd go back up to 4 again if I updated 3 of their old cases. So, based on the system, they were not doing their jobs properly because they constantly had open cases. This put their stats through the floor. This went on for ages, and one day I was hauled into an office by my manager, and waiting for me was his manager, the senior enforcement officer. His manager, an HR advisor for me and HR. They told me that I was doing call avoidance, gross misconduct, purposefully misadvising callers and not triaging calls correctly. From what they were saying and the paperwork they had with them, I knew it was a "you're fired" meeting. HR asked me if there was anything I wanted to say. So I looked at the enforcement manager, pointed at the senior enforcement officer, and said, "He told me to do it." The enforcement manager looked at me, looked at the senior enforcement manager, looked at me again, and then asked me to clarify what I meant. I explained it all from start to finish, making it clear that when I was sending emails, I always asked for advice and offered to log a case for the enforcement team if they wanted me to, and that before the email from the senior enforcement officer, my emails either were not replied to, but someone logged it for me, or someone replied to me to tell me to log a new case or to not log a new case. The enforcement manager sighed and then asked me if I could send him that email, so I quickly left, went back to my desk, sent the email thread to him, and came back into the office. He read the email, sighed deeper than he did before, and then asked us all to leave, but asked the senior enforcement officer to stay. And I left with a massive crap-eating grin on my face because I knew that I would keep my job. The fallout was pretty big because the IT team had to go in and manually close all the open cases so that the stats for the enforcement officers would go back to normal. The payroll department had to backdate all the months that the stats were messed up so that the performance bonus matched what would have happened had I not put their stats down. I didn't know they had performance bonuses until afterwards, and the senior enforcement officer got demoted to an enforcement officer based on their new email signature. A couple of weeks later, when the enforcement manager was less busy, he emailed me to basically say that he gives me permission to go back to emailing the enforcement team about cases. But I should use my own judgment. If I think I could justifiably get away with not logging something on the system, as in I could explain to my manager why I didn't think I should have logged it, then I shouldn't log it. And that logic would cut down the amount of emails I had to send to the enforcement team. No one got fired, but someone got demoted, and a lot of work happened in the background to fix what I did. Jumping down to the comment section on this one, there's one from a user called Your Wise Old Friend. It says, when the higher-ups tell you something, make sure to meticulously document that fact, and to keep copies of it so that you can refer to it. They will mercilessly plow you into the ground if it suits them in the moment. So you keep records and, should the need arise, you point at the person responsible and say, he or she made me do it, upon which statement you produce the goods. If it's not up to you to question management, it's not up to you to suffer the consequences of their decisions. This is something that we've mentioned in many previous videos, that when you're told to do something that just doesn't sound right, no matter what it is, ask your boss to give it to you in writing. There's a couple of things that will happen when you ask this. Either they look at what they told you and realize that they've made a mistake and they change it, or they give it to you in writing and you have backup when the crap hits the fan. Always cover your butt. Thank you for listening to the Comment Chameleon podcast. Don't forget to check us out on YouTube at youtube.com/@KCC.
Now that you've taken on that big job, you shouldn't have to settle for the big box. You've earned a trip to Northern Tool, and we're ready for the details. We know all about the little things that make the biggest difference. Maybe that's why they call us a problem solver's paradise. From pressure washers to power tools, pallet jacks to push carts, Northern Tool and Equipment carries the brands you depend on, like North Star, DeWalt, Milwaukee, and Strongway. We're made for this. Come see us in store or shop online at northerntool.com.
Thanks for switching lanes to Raising Cane's.
One box combo, please.
That's 4 juicy chicken fingers. We'll start cooking. Garlicky butter Texas toast tastes as good as it's looking. Fresh coleslaw and crispy fries you won't be skipping. And our secret cane sauce you want to keep dipping. Plus, our lemonade or iced tea made fresh today. Barney. Yo, 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 here's your chicken to go.
Wow, that was fast.
Raising Cane's chicken fingers. One love.
Thanks for switching lanes to Raising Cane's.
One box combo, please.
That's 4 juicy chicken fingers. We'll start cooking. Garlicky butter Texas toast tastes as good as it's looking. Fresh coleslaw and crispy fries you won't be skipping. And our secret cane sauce you want to keep dipping. Plus, our lemonade or iced tea made fresh today. Barney. Yo, 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 here's your chicken to go.
Wow, that was fast.
Raising Cane's chicken fingers. One love.
The McNay Print Fair is happening soon. 15 dealers from around the U.S. will have thousands of prints, drawings, watercolors, and photographs for sale in the Leeper Auditorium on Saturday, May 6th and Sunday, May 7th. You'll see works of art, meet dealers, and maybe go home with a new treasure. Whether you're looking for French landscape prints, powerful images of American life, or contemporary graphics, learn more at mcnayart.org/printfair. That's mcnayart.org/printfair.
Hello and welcome back to the Comment Chameleon podcast, where we cover your favorite stories from subreddits like Malicious Compliance, Pro Revenge, and Tales from Tech Support. Don't forget to check us out on YouTube at youtube.com/@KCC. Today, we're jumping into some F you Karen. This story comes to us from Help, I Hate Texas. I quit Karen reported me to HR for it. Let's jump right in. I was the director of sales ops for a $40 million a year software company. Karen was on my team. We processed purchase orders. Karen had a small vehicle accident that put her in a neck brace. She also needed once weekly physical therapy appointments and had some restrictions on duties, all of which I accommodated no issue. Despite meeting her needs, Karen decided coming into work was optional. HR noticed that she was repeatedly absent from work for 3 to 4 days at a time, multiple weeks in a row. They did not give me details, but told me documentation from her doctor did not justify all of these absences. To make matters worse, Karen would never give notice that she was going to be out, and sometimes would just no-show without ever calling, nor indicate how long she would be out. HR eventually told Karen she needed to either attend work more regularly or get a doctor to sign off on short-term disability. This worked for me. I would rather Karen take extended time off, so I could get a temp to take her responsibilities than be absent frequently with no warning. Karen's original doctor would not document a need for disability, so she found a doctor who would. She bragged to the team that she found a doctor that would sign off on anything. So Karen went on disability, and I was able to get a temp to cover her until she returned. Even though coworkers who kept in contact told me Karen was going to clubs and dancing and such, I didn't care. That was between her and HR. For now, at least, the work was getting done. The time period of Karen's short-term disability eventually expired. At this point, she either had to come back to work or go on long-term disability so I could replace her permanently. Karen's sign anything doctor would not give her documentation for long-term disability, so Karen grudgingly came back to work. She quickly went back to being absent all of the time. She also refused to do even the basic duties of her job. I went to HR and told them things were not working out, and that I wanted to replace her. They were on board with this plan. HR brought Karen in for the talk, but Karen flipped out and said she would sue. Suddenly, HR was not on board. Didn't matter that Karen really had no legal standing, just the threat of a lawsuit made HR decide it was more important to make Karen happy than to let me have a functional ops department. In one instance, I asked Karen to do purchase order review, and she complained to HR about me bossing her around. I'm her boss. HR told me that I could no longer give assignments or work duties to Karen. WTF? When I said that was fine, as long as they let me hire someone else to do Karen's job, they refused to give me a requisition for a new employee. This went on for months, and Karen quickly learned she could complain to HR about anything and get her way. You would not believe the accommodation she was given. Meanwhile, she made no effort to hide that she was not really injured anymore, was barely coming to work, but was still getting paid. She even encouraged other team members to take advantage of this loophole she had found. Then, one day during month-end crunch, Karen had not come in or called, so I called and asked her if she planned to work that day. It was a simple question carefully crafted to be neutral in tone. She told HR that I had harassed her with my phone call. I got written up, so I immediately put in my 2 weeks notice. Not gonna deal with my career being effed by a woman who had worked maybe 6 days in a month, especially when I gave 60 to 70 hours a week to the company. With me suddenly gone, the sales ops fell apart. Purchase orders were not going through. To address this emergency, company senior VP took over sales ops until my replacement could be found. HR was certainly not going to tell this guy he could not give Karen duties, so Karen actually had to work. About a month after I quit, Karen got my home number and called me, furious that she now had to actually work. She told me she was going to report me to HR for a company I no longer worked for. And sure enough, she did exactly that. I kept in touch with members of my old team, and they told me she was laughed out of the HR office. But here's where it gets absurd. Karen called me again, cursing, screaming, and threatening me, and demanded I give her the contact information for HR at my new company. she was going to report me to a department that had no idea who she was, nor had any jurisdiction over her complaints. The stupidity was unbelievable, and I giggled at her right up until I hung up and blocked her. Last I heard, Karen was finally fired, got 0 unemployment benefits, and ended up moving her and her kids in with her mom. Okay, does anyone else here think that the HR people should be fired with cause here? Because if you don't show up and you don't call, that's a no-call, no-show, and that's grounds for termination. Any place that I've worked for has even been a little bit lax on that. They said you could no-call, no-show 2 times, but the 3rd time, don't bother coming back. And don't get me wrong, those first 2 times, you would get raked over the coals by your boss when you came back in. Seems to me like they gave Karen more than enough leeway here, and Karen wasn't doing anything to help herself.
University Health in San Antonio, Texas is hiring nursing, radiology, and respiratory professionals. University Health is the premier Level 1 trauma center in South Texas. We have earned recognition as a 2022 top U.S. workplace. We offer relocation assistance and excellent benefits. If you are a nursing, radiology, or respiratory healthcare professional, we want to visit with you. Apply today at bestcareerssa.com. That's bestcareerssa.com.
Story comes to us from FoxLover96. My Karen aunt is jealous of my 3-year-old cousin getting cranial surgery. Let's jump right in. I can't make this crap up. My aunt has always been a jealous and entitled creature who always tries to comb through a tragic situation to find some factor that doesn't relate to her at all to make it all about her, regardless of the situation. And if she can't find any factor, she gets mad and makes it directly known that she is the one who should be pitied. Just recently, my cousin's son had to go through a rather serious and terrifying surgery where they had to crack his skull open. He is 3 years old and he was born after 4 miscarriages. So obviously, the family was on pins and needles, hoping for a successful surgery and fast and painless recovery for him. Except for my aunt. Not sure if the idea of her or her own grandson not being the one getting all the attention and positive thoughts is what threw her over the edge, despite her and her grandson being completely fine, or what, but her response was nothing short of disgusting. In the family group chat that mom and aunt are a part of, all the siblings are, which I believe is about 6 people. My one uncle was sending updates all day as he had driven out to be there the day of his grandson's procedure. So, of course, everyone was replying anxiously for updates, except my aunt. So, she took it upon herself to text my mom how annoying it was to constantly be receiving text messages from everyone about my cousin. My mom reminded her that this toddler was going through a super intense and possibly deadly surgery, and that everyone was nervous. My aunt then made it apparent to point out that this kid always has problems when anyone brings him up. This is because my cousin was born quite a few months premature, so of course he has some issues going on. My mom was already mad at this and reminded her that if this was her grandson, she'd want everyone to give her and her son and his child nice comments and thoughts and prayers. And she shouldn't be acting this way about a toddler getting surgery. My aunt's only other response was that everyone was being over dramatic about him, and it wasn't that serious. At that point, I almost darn near lost it. I despise this woman with a passion and a half. I can't imagine being so self-absorbed that you tell someone a 3-year-old skull being cracked open like a coconut is over dramatic, and she wonders why nobody talks to her. Jumping down to the comment section on this one, we have one from a user called Azura12. It says, "To be honest, I would have said fine and just created a new group chat without her. If she doesn't want to be part of a conversation that is not centered around her, so be it. Just create a new group chat and mute the other one. Some would suggest just leaving the other group, but then that little message saying X has left will appear, and that will start even bigger drama. Just start a new group and periodically just send a random LOL or something partially relevant to the original one, but never fully engage. Eventually, she will understand she is being ignored for a reason." I think another way to deal with this one would be to take the petty route, because that aunt was messaging OP's mom and telling OP's mom only that they didn't want to receive those messages. I think OP's mom should have taken a screenshot of that and popped it into the group chat with all the rest of the family. Let them see the aunt's true colors. Then you can pretty much guarantee that aunt will not receive any annoying messages from anybody in the family ever again, or any messages at all. This story comes to us from Material Mailbox. Concert Karen tries to stick up for me and my friend. Let's jump right in. To set the scene, this was at a sold-out show at an outdoor music venue in Austin. There are no seats and it's just about 2,000 people standing on a big lawn in front of the stage. My buddy and I get there right as the opener was finishing, and we maneuver to a spot that's in the middle of the audience. Not super close to the stage, but not far either, within a fairly dense crowd. About 5 minutes after we settle into our spot, there's a couple that's doing the same thing, just trying to find their way to a spot of their own. And I move out of the way to let them through, and my friend does the same, but in the opposite direction. They end up settling there right by us, kind of in between us. They probably had no way of even knowing I was with my buddy because it was dark and because I wasn't even talking to him at the time or interacting with him in any way. We were just sipping our beers and waiting for the headliner to come on. Instead of immediately moving back towards my friend or him towards me, we just stayed put for a bit, and I fully intended on moving back to him at some point before the headliner started, which was an extremely easy task. Again, we had already maneuvered through a bunch of people, and now he was only about 4 feet away. Easy task. Well, Karen is also very close to us, is at the concert alone, and about 5 minutes later, she decides to take it upon herself to point out to the couple that they separated my friend and me, that was a very rude thing to do, and that I'm not trying to be a jerk, but just wanted to let y'all know that you're being jerks. Really, just verbally berating them and trying to start an argument. She was, in fact, being a huge jerk to them. Otherwise, she would have approached the situation in a much friendlier manner and in much less aggressive tone. Or, better yet, just minded her own business and kept her mouth shut. Keep in mind, my friend and I had not interacted with Karen at all up until this point, not even making eye contact or noticing her. And throughout this unpleasant interaction, we didn't interact with either Karen or the poor couple at all. After about 30 seconds of listening to Karen berate this couple, I moved easily back to my friend and we just kind of watched the whole interaction in bewilderment for the next minute or so. For about 10 minutes after their interaction ended, the girl in the couple was visibly upset, and the guy was talking to her and trying to comfort her. Still right near me, my buddy, and Karen. I'm sure Karen noticed too, but of course, she didn't apologize or say anything else to them. Eventually, the couple moved away. Very possible that Karen just completely ruined the concert for them for absolutely no reason at all, other than to be a Karen. Okay, I'm gonna need some other opinions on this one because I'm listening to this one and finding that OP didn't stand up for themselves, didn't say anything to Karen or the couple. What's up with that? Even a quick, hey Karen, it's okay, I'm not bothered by them would have worked. Or if they didn't want to talk to Karen, they could have consoled the poor girl that Karen was berating when they saw that they were visibly upset by it.
University Health in San Antonio, Texas is hiring nursing, radiology, and respiratory professionals. University Health is the premier Level 1 trauma center in South Texas. We have earned recognition as a 2022 top U.S. workplace. We offer relocation assistance and excellent benefits. If you are a nursing, radiology, or respiratory healthcare professional, we want to visit with you. Apply today at bestcareerssa.com. That's bestcareerssa.com.
This story comes to us from Pabst Malone. You didn't have to leave, but now you do. Let's jump right in. A recent post reminded me of this one that I had stuffed so far back in my brain that I almost forgot it happened. I'll try to keep it short and sweet. Many moons ago, young me was working at a large retail chain, and I worked in pretty much every department. But this particular day, I was working as a cashier, my least favorite role that I filled. And we were decently steady, no more than 3 deep in a line at a time. My manager came over and flipped my lane light off, saying it was time for my break. I was checking out one woman who had her items on the belt already. A lady behind her was starting to unload her cart, and the lady behind her moved to a different lane. Sweet, 5 minutes and I'm done, I thought to myself. Boy, was I wrong. The second woman, our hero Karen of this tale, stated, "I'm not moving," to which I replied, "Hey, no big deal, you're fine." "I'm not effing moving," she said again. "Ma'am, I didn't say you had to. I'll take care of you as soon as I'm done with the guest in front of you." About 30 seconds pass, and I'm just about done with the lady in front, just running her coupons and such, and I heard loud banging. I look back, and Karen is slamming her crap on the belt, and I give her a sort of, "The F are you doing?" sort of look. And then she starts ripping crap off of the little check lane shelf, gum, mints, last little minute type of crap, and throwing it on the floor, and starts just shrieking unintelligible noises. She then slams her coffee on the ground and says, "I need someone to ring me up right effing now." I set my little lane light to flashing, usually to indicate need for manager override or some other small issue, but AP was already on their way. She ended up getting escorted out, and I had to reset the shelf and mop up her coffee mess. I haven't worked in retail since, thank goodness. Ah yes, the typical Karen, the full-grown person who is having a complete toddler breakdown. I sincerely hope that when AP came and removed Karen from the store, that they trespassed her so she could never come back again. I'm really happy to hear stories of people like this being removed and not letting them get away with what they're doing. It really wasn't that long ago that most retail stores had that customer is always right mentality, and somebody who did something like this, the management would be apologizing to them regardless of what was done, and they would still be allowed to buy their stuff and leave the store. I'm really glad to see even just a hint of giving these people some accountability. This next story comes to us from Magnetic Doorknob. "Not my fault you can't park, Karen." Let's jump right in. This just happened maybe an hour ago, so I thought I would share my tale with you fine folk. I'm pretty anal when it comes to how I park. Drives me nuts if I'm not straight and in between the lines. I have a backup camera on my car, so there's no reason I shouldn't know when I'm not parked right. On to the story. My girlfriend is getting her butt kicked by a cold, so I went to the store to get her a few things. I see a spot close to the store, so I back my car in and park. I realize the car next to me has their front tires over the line and was parked crooked. There isn't enough space for me to get out on my side, even though I'm pretty centered and straight. I was tired and didn't feel like finding another parking spot, so I just climbed over and got out my passenger side. I lock my car and start to head towards the store. The following conversation happened. "Excuse me, you need to move your car. You're parked too close on purpose. You got out on your passenger side." I pointed to her car. "Your front tires are over the line. I'm in my spot properly." "Over here," talking about her driver's door that is almost on top of the line. "Over here, I have space. Now move your car." Or you could move yours and park right. I head into the store and glance over my shoulder just to make sure she didn't try anything with my car. She was backing up and straightening her car in the space. It's a small victory, but I love a bit of parking lot justice. Okay, so the comment section on this one is really divided. Half of the people here say that OP did the right thing parking straight in the parking spot, getting out their passenger side, and going on about their business. Half of the people in the comments say that OP is the Karen because they parked too close to the other car, even though the other car was parked improperly. Thank you for listening to the Comment Chameleon podcast. Don't forget to check us out on YouTube at youtube.com/@KCC.
Thanks for switching lanes to Raising Cane's.
One box combo, please.
That's 4 juicy chicken fingers you won't be skipping, and our secret cane sauce you want to keep dipping.
Wow, That was fast.
Raising Cane's Chicken Fingers. One love.
Thanks for switching lanes to Raising Cane's.
One box combo, please.
That's 4 juicy chicken fingers we'll start cooking. Garlicky butter Texas toast tastes as good as it's looking. Fresh coleslaw and crispy fries you won't be skipping. And our secret cane sauce you'll want to keep dipping. Plus, our lemonade or iced tea made fresh today by me. Yo, 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 here's your chicken to go.
Wow, that was fast.
Raising Cane's Chicken Fingers. One love.
Years after Detroit went bankrupt, the city was reborn. Local developers wanted to help build back their city, but soon discovered that while they had the talent, they were lacking the opportunity. The reality was, minority-owned development firms were only getting a fraction of the major projects. This has inspired J.P. Morgan Chase to invest in local talent and help aspiring developers of color grow their communities while making them more equitable. Learn more at jpmorganchase.com/impact.
Today's advances in technology mean more and more banking transactions take place in the palm of your hand. That's why Broadway Bank offers best-in-class digital banking, as well as award-winning online services, allowing you to manage your finances wherever and whenever. True to their Texas roots, Broadway continues to offer a personal connection only an independent bank can provide. This is modern banking, locally sourced and personally delivered. Visit Broadway.bank.
Hello and welcome back to the Comment Chameleon podcast, where we cover stories from your favorite subreddits like malicious compliance, pro-revenge, and tales from tech support. Don't forget to check us out on YouTube at youtube.com/@KCC. Today, we're jumping into some malicious compliance. This story comes to us from @Zerum. Confirm work or I don't get to do it? Cool, then I don't get to do it. Let's jump right in. My fiance, 27 male, and I work for the same company. And this actually happened to him a few days ago, but thought someone might get a kick out of it. We work for a trucking company that has dedicated contract work. I found the job posting, showed it to him, and we both decided to apply for it. The job posting was listed as home daily. When we did the joke of a phone interview, we were told home daily. When we finished our initial training and spoke to the account manager, we were told home daily. This was all nearly 4 years ago. Flash forward 3 years, roughly a year ago, and things start falling apart. The company we work for is rather large, and the account manager has very little sway over the contracts that the company negotiates with the client. It's done by a regional manager. So during the yearly contract update in 2022, the client makes more demands and offers less pay. The district manager just wants to keep the client as a customer and agrees blindly without thorough consideration. The biggest change that matters for the story is there were new stores added to the contract to be covered by the account, and 2 out of 4 of the new stores are not home daily. There were many other changes that happened. That's just the one that most directly affects the next series of events. Due to some other changes that drastically messed up the life of the office workers for the account manager, who had been working for the same company for 10 plus years, quits without warning. We get a new account manager, Sarah. A few months later, one of the 2 supervisors, who had been with that company for 10 plus years, quits without warning. We get a new supervisor. supervisor. More on him in a tick. 2 months after that, the second supervisor, who had been with the company for 10 plus years, quits without warning. Are you seeing a pattern here? So now the account is left with an account manager and a supervisor who both have less than a year's experience, flailing to figure everything out. Back to the bit about home daily. About 6 months ago, my fiance started getting the loads that were not home daily. It took him a day and a half to complete one of the new stores. Day 1, he would go up to the store. Day 2, he would come back and do a super short run to conclude his shift before coming home. The first time he got the new store, he called the supervisor to ask about it. The supervisor was confused what needed clarification. Will I be getting home? It's a lot of miles for a single day's run. No, you'll be sleeping roughly at truck stop about 4 hours away from home. I thought I was home daily. Who said that? The job was posted as home daily. I was told home daily during the interview, and I was told home daily by the previous account manager at training. Well, I don't know anything about that. I wasn't here for any of that. What I do know is that Sarah looked at everyone's contracts and nobody has home daily in the contract. So everyone is expected to take equal share of the new stores to make it fair. Okay, but I know there are some guys who are hired home weekends because they sleep at the operating center in their trucks and go home for 4 days every so often. Yeah, we have some guys who live out of state. So why aren't they doing the new stores since they don't need to go home every night? As I said, everyone is expected to take equal share to make it fair, and nobody's contract state home daily or weekend home time or whatever. That was never part of the deal. I have a family. I took this job thinking that I'd have time with them. I wouldn't have taken the job if I knew it wasn't in my contract that I'd be home daily. Well, you're free to get another job if you like, but without 10 days notice, you'll be blacklisted and ineligible for rehire. So are you quitting or not? My fiance angrily did the load, thinking it was going to be a once every now and then thing. Turns out they sent him twice a week bare minimum. On top of that, most of the miles for the load are back roads up and down windy mountainous roads posted at 35 miles per hour. We are paid by the miles. He drives an additional 4 hours for this new store for zero extra pay because the store is in the middle of nowhere with no major highways. He takes a major pay loss on top of the inconvenience of not being able to come home, sleep in his own bed, and be with his family. Then, about 3 months ago, the supervisor messages both my fiance and I to say that going forward, we will be expected to confirm all loads and work or we won't get loads. We receive our work and loads 12 to 24 hours in advance, so we do have some time to confirm them, but it was never a concern before, and we already had a lot of duties to fulfill that it wasn't a priority each day to make sure we typed a message, confirm store 1124, at the end of our shifts each day. The supervisor called us both out on it and said that this was an important part of the workflow process. I asked him why it was suddenly so important. He insisted it was always important. I told him that I had never had to confirm loads each day, and I have never failed to show up for work. And on the super odd occasion where I'm unable to do a load, it's because of something like a flat tire or truck breakdown that I'm waiting for repairs. And I was always sure to contact the office and let them know ASAP. Load confirmations are just busy work that is unnecessary on everyone's parts. The boss insists once more it is, and please just do it. At that point, I gave up the argument. Maybe 60% of the time I remember to confirm loads, my fiance even less. Both my fiance and I receive angry messages on our work tablets stating that going forward, if we do not confirm a load, it will be assumed that we are not able to work the load and it will be pulled from us and we will be placed on standby, paid at 50% average days load pay if we aren't called in. Well, over winter, most of the loads for this new store canceled because of it getting drowned in snow. Now, my fiance is getting loads for it again. He got a notification that he was supposed to go to this new store on Sunday. Guess who forgot to confirm his load on Saturday? Sunday, he wakes up, no load, and an angry message from the supervisor. Because of your failure to confirm your load, it has been taken off you and given to someone else who actually wants the work. You're on standby. Fiance rejoices. Tuesday, he's once more given the new store and forgets to confirm his load and wakes up to no load and an angry message that says basically the same and concludes with, "Call me." So my fiance calls the supervisor, and the supervisor wants to know why it's so hard to confirm loads. My fiance just kinda dismisses it with a shrug and ends the call. We found out Friday after talking to some other drivers that all previously home daily drivers are now doing the same thing. Get a store they don't like. Mostly these two new stores just don't confirm. If we have to confirm to get to do the store, we just won't confirm. Jumping down to the comment section on this one, there's one from a user called Random Boomer. It says, have you actually looked at the contracts that supposedly don't say home daily? Cause I'm not so sure I believe them. OP responded to this one and said, our contracts at Hire were extremely short from what I remember. It was about a page and listed mostly job responsibilities. Can't remember for sure if it listed specifications on home daily. We weren't offered a copy, but could request one if needed. I didn't think much of it. First trucking job, didn't think the boss would try to mess around with my schedule so much. Now I wish I had requested a copy, because about 2 weeks ago I got my hazmat trying to get a new and hopefully better job, and you have to put current employer on the background check for the hazmat. The lady at the DOT office recognized my company and shook her head saying, I worked for them for 7 years before hanging up my keys. I mentioned about the contract issue and she said, yep, they'll change your contract willy-nilly without telling you to suit business needs. When I started, they offered all drivers a physical copy of the contract. But my husband, who still works there, said his new coworkers sign a digital copy and then have to request a paper copy. And anytime you actually want the digital copy, they email it to your work email, which no driver has access to. It made me curious enough to ask for a copy. Guess what email they can only email it to? OP, I am really glad that you're looking for another job with another company, because this one sounds shady as crap. Let this also be a lesson for anybody getting a new job that involves a contract. You need a copy of that. If they're not willing to give you a copy of that contract right off the bat, print it out for you right then and there, and hand it into your little hands, well, you need to walk away, because that company is not legit.
¿Qué significa ser de aquí? Para mí, ser de aquí es saber que aunque tenemos diferentes orígenes, todos luchamos por nuestra